Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as usual, we start off our evening with recognition for the accomplishment of our student athletes. At this time, we will be recognizing our National Merit Scholarship finalist. Lisa, are you joining us?
We'll be all right, Lisa. No, we're doing the National Merit Scholarship finals.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to announce that we have 3 National Merit finalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. I believe one of the 3 is here tonight, but let us first start with Kayla Zhang. Is Kayla here? No. Let me tell you a fun fact about Kayla. All 3 of these young people have incredible GPAs. That's a given. To be able to be awarded as a national merit finalist through the College Board, it's based on their achievement on the SATs, but also their grade point average. And if you look at Kayla Zhang, who is an incredible student, she is off to Cornell in the fall. One thing about Kayla, a fun fact, is that Kayla is Chinese. She speaks fluent Mandarin, and she talked about in her essay to college that I had the privilege to read about the challenge when she went and spent the summer in China with her family there. And it was a beautiful essay where she talks about being both culturally and linguistically bilingual. So we certainly want to take a moment to congratulate Kayla as a finalist, even though she's not here. If you could please join me in recognizing her. Yay, Kayla. The next National Merit Scholar finalist is Owen Tanzer. Owen, I didn't see you either. But Owen is, again, an excellent student. Fun fact about Owen is he was one of the co-founders of the Young Progressives Club at Weston High School, which is a very active club in doing community service, both at the local and national level. And Owen is also known for being an actor in the screen, I don't know what it's called, SGA, or what is it? Thank you. And Owen will be off to Johns Hopkins in the fall, so we would certainly like to congratulate Owen for being a National Merit Scholarship finalist. And now, not only a finalist, but a winner. Yes, a winner in the National Merit Scholarship Program. Oftentimes we don't get winners, but we are so happy to acknowledge that Carolyn Zach is not only a finalist, but a winner of the National Merit Scholarship. Come on up, Carolyn. Carolyn, we are so proud of you. You are just an amazing student. You've taken, obviously, all the most rigorous classes. Carolyn has done an incredible job both academically and co-curricularly. You participate in 2 sports, correct? Yeah. I'm going to try to remember golf, field hockey, and golf. And a fun fact about Carolyn, she hasn't decided between Brown and Dartmouth. So hopefully she will be deciding soon, but what a great choice. So congratulations, Carolyn. We're so proud of you.
Yep.
Oh, photo op. Sorry.
Don't run away. Yeah, I traditionally embarrass, and you have to pass on the word to the other 2. Clearly, you've achieved this based on your ability with an assessment. Your mind is clearly phenomenal. I challenge you, and I've done this each year I've been here, to take that great mind, combine it with your great heart, be it Brown or what was that other school? I know, I'm teasing you. Brown or Dartmouth, wherever. Just wow them with that mind and wow them with that combined heart. That's the challenge. Congratulations.
Oh, photo op.
The next recognition is for the C-SPAN documentary competition. Jeffrey Brencher, who's our phenomenal leader of the video program, it seems almost every year we place students not only into that competition, but at the upper end of that competition, which has thousands of entries. It's truly a national award. And what we're going to do first is show you the winning video. It's about 6 minutes long. You'll learn a lot in those 6 minutes. I've seen it about 4 times. It's incredibly compelling. And then we don't know if all of the artists, videographers who created this are here, but we'll call for who's here to honor them. So we want to play that now, please.
A number of individual rights, as outlined in the Bill of Rights and the subsequent amendments to the Constitution. Often forgotten in the discussion of what it means to be an American, however, are the responsibilities that come with citizenship. The responsibility to exercise our rights, to be aware of what is going on in government, and to take action when the government isn't doing its job. The Pentagon Papers are perhaps the largest leak of government secrets in American history, and they directly pertain to these responsibilities.
So a free press, whether you like them or not, is absolutely essential to democracy. Without, it's the only check that is not a part of the government.
Shortly following World War II, Vietnam was divided into the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in the north and the Republic of Vietnam in the south. The north was communist and supported by the USSR, and the south was capitalist and backed by the US, as the world's 2 superpowers continued to find themselves in direct opposition. As the conflict between the 2 sides escalated in the early 1960s, President John F. Kennedy sent advisors to the South in order to support President Ngo's in Diem. A violent guerrilla group known as the Viet Cong had arisen in the South and was threatening to overthrow Diem, prompting Kennedy's actions. The decision to send advisors, however, proved to be too little when the Viet Cong assassinated Diem in 1962. The state of the 2 Vietnams only got worse, which is highlighted by the Gulf of Tonkin incident just 2 years later.
It is my duty to the American people to report that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
At this time, a former Marine by the name of Daniel Ellsberg was working for the Pentagon under Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, specializing in international security affairs. He then went to South Vietnam for 2 years for the State Department. It was in Vietnam that Ellsberg became disillusioned with the war effort. As both a citizen and government employee, Ellsberg had been told repeatedly that the war was winnable and that the U.S. forces would gain ground. But during his time in Vietnam, Ellsberg saw little progress and viewed the war as a futile conflict. He was particularly upset about the government's characterization of the conflict as a civil war, instead of calling it a, quote, war of American aggression. When Ellsberg returned to the Pentagon, he became part of the Vietnam Task Force, a group McNamara had commissioned to compile government documents describing the progress of the war. These documents include confidential data and analysis that only certain government officials had access to. Months into the project, Ellsberg sent copies of these papers to the RAND Corporation, a company that offers military analysis to the U.S. government, and began to make an additional copy as well. These papers contained a number of government secrets, including that President Truman helped France reassert control of Vietnam, that Kennedy only sent advisors but he sent troops, that Johnson intensified America's role in the war without informing the public, and that one reason for U.S. involvement was that they wanted to have influence over an area near the People's Republic of China. These documents became known as the Pentagon Papers. Ellsberg's decision to leak the Pentagon Papers in 1971 to New York Times reporter Neil Sheehan stemmed from President Nixon's movement away from his campaign promise to end the Vietnam War as quickly as he reached office. After debating the issue with the newspaper's legal counsel, Sheehan and the Times decided to publish the first part of the papers on July 13th. They continued to print the papers for the following 2 days, until the federal government ordered them to discontinue the printing of the documents.
Question of how to protect secrets on one hand, which is inherently undemocratic and inherently counter to the notion of free speech, undermines that very notion, particularly secrets that the government is keeping in order to protect the national security.
The case came before the Supreme Court, which sided 6-3 with the New York Times, concluding that the First Amendment protected the right of the media to publish these documents.
That does not relieve you of the responsibility to keep us informed, to seek our advice and consent, and which is also in the Constitution.
The way to keep people honest is not to hope they're honest, some are and a lot aren't, is to make them be honest by holding up a free press to show what they're doing as much as you can.
Ordinarily, you can't go into court and stop a publication from publishing information. There are exceptions, but his exceptions were so narrow that it made the victory that we won in that case, as articulated by Potter Stewart, a great victory for freedom of the press.
The events of the Pentagon Papers also serve as a reminder of the responsibilities that come with being an American citizen. It is an integral part of being an American to have a civic duty to inform your fellow citizens of any and all details you might know, even if it comes at your own personal expense. Ellsberg risked a distinguished career in government, not to mention significant jail time, in order to uphold the American duty. The New York Times risked a company-ending lawsuit in order to uphold the same American value. Perhaps Ellsberg said it best, in stating that if the lessons of his actions are lost, it will be, quote, back to unquestioning acceptance of government pronouncements and reliance on the president's judgment, formed and enacted in secret, both totally unfounded and unwise, irresponsible in a democracy, paving the way to new Vietnam.
So will the following three students who did that exemplary video please come forward? Adric Scaramuza, Beck Reeferson, and Aaron Miller. We are so proud of you.
Okay, don't run away, lads. So I'm going to give the official title for everybody here. This is the second time I've gotten to compliment you, by the way, on this film, as you know. I mentioned before you walked in, your timing was brilliant, frankly, to walk in while your great art is there. But this is titled the 2019 C-SPAN Student Cam Documentary Competition. And you all know how many you roughly competed with. How many was it roughly nationwide?
Over 3,000, about 3,500.
And how many winners were there?
150.
Yeah, 150.
So you can do the math. So it's an incredible accomplishment. And before you walked in, I mentioned that Jeffrey Brencher is kind of the genius behind your great, great work. But I had quoted actually W.D. Du Bois when I heard this to say, history is who we are now. History is who we are now. And what you did there that's so impressive to so many of us is you wove from the Constitution up through a pivotal moment for us, back to the media, i.e. the Vietnam War, but back to the media, how we actually express ideas freely, openly, understand debate, and you did it with incredible reach. I don't know how you got those interviews with those individuals. Those are real honest goodness interviews. You can tell people later how you did it, but congratulations. You make us all incredibly proud for this very relevant and rigorous work. Thank you. Good job. We'll do the athletes, then go to the Odyssey of Mind.
Good evening. I have the privilege to stand up here and recognize some of our amazing student athletes from the winter season this year. And we're going to start with our only state champion from this past winter, and that was our girls ski team. So if Coach Rich Fanning can come on up and help us pass out these certificates. And Rich actually gets a certificate first. Good job. So for those of you who didn't get an opportunity to watch our girls ski this winter, it wasn't the best winter. As much rain as we're having now is as little snow as we had in the beginning of the winter. So it was kind of tough on them at the mountain and getting their practices in and everything they need to do to prepare. But they went out and figured out a way to do it. They were down on the lower turf field doing their dry lands before they could get up on the mountain and get their skiing going. And Rich and his coaches, his assistant coaches, do a phenomenal job getting our girls ready. But they went out and took it to the other teams on the mountain, winning the Class S state championship and finishing third, I believe, right? Third in the state open race that took place, which is really a pretty big accomplishment for a school our size. When you think about the schools that beat us, which were probably Fairfield probably doesn't have girls. Fairfield High School, right, which is two high schools combined for ski. And was it Ridgefield? Yeah, and Ridgefield. So two very big schools with only two schools that were above us. So I don't believe either of the assistants are here, Doug Hoffman or Cole Token. Nope. Haley Bayou. Ryan Delaney. There we go, we got one. Carolyn Gluck. Julia Ann Gregory. She's here. Yeah, is it? Lauren Harris. Emma Nelson. None of the rest of them are here. I'm getting the inside scoop that none of the rest of our skiers are here. Are there any other girl skiers here? Might be easier. Well, I'm sure they all would like to be. So these will be our representative of our state championship girls ski team. Face this way. Shorter. Do you want me to take them and have them pick them up in my office? That'd probably be easier. Okay, well, congratulations, girls, and thanks to Ryan and Julia for coming tonight so that we could at least recognize you two. We're going to move on to our all-state athletes from the winter. I get asked all the time when people go into other gyms, why don't we have our all-state athletes' names up on banners like you might see in some other gyms? And I answer the question the same way every time I get asked. It's because we average almost 50 all-state athletes a year at Weston High School. So our average is 47 all-state athletes every year for the last 15 years. We couldn't fit them on the walls. That's why we don't have them up there. Our athletes just achieve at such a high level. So let's start with Katie Orifice, girls basketball. Mia Axelson, girls cross country. I'm sorry, girls indoor track. Yes, Katie is also getting her the ball that she scored her 1,000th point with commemorated, which will be in our trophy case once I finally get that done for her. So congratulations on that, Katie, too. A very big honor there also. Lauren Bigelow, indoor track. Hannah Green, indoor track. Michelle Gutowski, indoor track. I saw Michelle. Natalie Haythorne, indoor track. Next. Elise Russell, indoor track. Another one that's here. Kathleen Saucy, indoor track. Nicole Stacheski, indoor track. Not here. She is here. Ava Zielinski, indoor track. Matthew Bigelow, indoor track. That's not here. John Casal, indoor track. Baruch Goodman, indoor track. Aiden Kyle, indoor track. Lauren Harris, girls ski. Toby Bill, indoor track. Wanted to make you think we forgot you, but we didn't. Emma Nelson, girls skiing. And Chris Amato, boys ski. I don't think he's here either. So again, this is just from the winter. Great job. Great job, athletes. A few of you can stay. Michelle. Ava. Ava. For the winter, we still have one more level of recognition, and that is our all New England athletes. One of our indoor track relay teams earned all New England honors by finishing in the top 6 at the New England races in Boston, Massachusetts, sometime in early February, I think it was, right? Early March. And 2 of them are here tonight. The 2 that are not here were Lauren Bigelow and Nicole Stacheski, and the 2 that are, Ava Zielinski and Michelle Gutowski. Again, congratulations.
Patty? Now, in the true Renaissance style, we went from matters of the mind to athletics, which is truly a matter of the mind as well, and now back to the matter of the mind again. So, Rudd and Patty, you can introduce all of this, please.
So I'm going to start off. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brett Anderson, who I can't say thank you enough, who has really helped bring Odyssey of the Mind to our school and now into the middle school. And so I'm going to let him speak a little bit about the program, but a big congratulations goes out to everyone who participated in this program this year. I'll hold this.
I have a few things. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Ed and administration for having us here tonight and recognizing the achievement of the students who participated in Odyssey of the Mind this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about their achievement. I want to congratulate all the students who participated in Odyssey of the Mind, and particularly the ones we're recognizing tonight. Odyssey of the Mind is one of the, in my opinion, one of the best extracurricular student-centered creative problem-solving competition programs out there. The students, all of the students that participated in Odyssey of the Mind, including the students you're going to, who are going to get recognized tonight, worked for about 5.5 months on novel, open-ended problems. And then they went to the Connecticut Odyssey of the Mind state finals at Southern Connecticut State University on March 16th. They competed with students across the state of Connecticut. And the students who are being recognized tonight placed either first or second in their division. We have students, 2 teams from Weston Intermediate School who competed in Division 1, and a team from Weston Middle School who competed in Division 2. And as a result of placing first or second in their division, in their problem area, they got invited to compete in the Odyssey of the Mind World Finals, which are taking place over Memorial Day weekend at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. So they'll be traveling out there very soon to compete with teams from all over the world. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the parent volunteer coaches of Odyssey of the Mind. They are the backbone of this program. There is no way that it would be at all possible for this program to exist without parent volunteer coaches. It just simply wouldn't happen. So a huge thank you to parent volunteer coaches who stepped up and gave up their time and their patience for this program.
All right. We'll call the. So when I call your name, if you want to come on up and you can get a certificate. Roxana Kissel. Anya Rajesh. Congratulations. Congratulations. Sorry, what else we got? Sorry. Oh, Perry Schlief. And Peyton Schlief. Congratulations. Congratulations, sweetie. Congratulations, sweetie. Congratulations. You got it? Congratulations, sweetie. Ali Zafar. Okay, and this is one of our teams that won. This is our first team. Congratulations, Ali. Okay, and next, Will Kiefer. Max Moffley. Congratulations, Will. Congratulations. Tim Moffley. And Kavan Patel. Oh, and Brian Yee. Congratulations. Congratulations, Kavan. Yeah. Congratulations. And team number 3. Sorry. Oh, Dylan Field. Stephanie Field. Rohak Gulia. Is Rohak here? Oh, Rohak. Excuse me, Rohak. Come on, come on, come on. Sorry. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations, congratulations. And who else we got? And Kyler Murphy. Jack Wolford. And them too. And Michael Zana. Congratulations, Kyler. Hey, Jack. Hey, hi, congratulations. 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 Okay. Okay, so photo op. Come on over here, guys. Yeah.
Wow. You did it. One, two, three. Odyssey. Well done.
This is, okay, Rajesh.
Yeah, we're just gonna go, yeah, we're just gonna go. Yeah, we're just gonna go down the list. All right, now we're gonna do the official part of the recognitions. If I could have the first motion, please.
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize the 2019 National Merit Scholarship finalists Owen Tanzer, Carolyn Zek, and Kyla Zhang.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Ruby. All in favor? Great, thank you. Next.
Move that the Board of Education recognize Carolyn Zek as 2019 National Merit Scholarship winner.
May I have a second? Thank you, Tony. All in favor? Great, thank you. C-SPAN.
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize Aaron Miller, Adric Scaramusa, and Beck Refferson for honorable mention in the 2019 C-SPAN Student Cam documentary competition.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Ruby. All in favor? Great, thank you. Odyssey of the Mind.
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize the participants of the Weston Intermediate School Odyssey of the Mind first place winners and Weston Middle School Odyssey of the Mind second place winners at the Connecticut Odyssey of the Mind state tournament.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Taffy. All in favor? Thank you. Skiing.
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize the 2019 CIAC Class S Girls Skiing State Champions.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Great, thank you. All New England athletes.
Move that the Board of Education recognize the Winter 2019 All-State and All-New England athletes.
May I have a second, please? Sorry, Ruby. Ruby. Saw lots of hands. All in favor? Thank you. Yeah, all right, so now we're going to honor another very special person. Sarah Spalding, I know I saw you in here earlier. If you could please come up here and join us. So every once in a while, the board undergoes a transition, and it's always nice to take a moment to be able to recognize a former board member. Serving in this role is very meaningful to all of us who choose to serve. It is also very time-consuming, and it can sometimes be very emotional when you're dealing with friends who you love dearly who are not happy with something that's going on. So it can be very challenging at times as well. And it's only appropriate for 5 years of very honorable service. Six, sorry. Honorable service that we say truly thank you. You mentored many of us who are here today, and we are so grateful for all you do. Thank you.
And Sarah, if I may add, on behalf of the administration and the staff, You always had us in your heart, in your hand. You challenged us, you pushed us, you probed and made us do the best, but only for the best reasons, and that's all of the students and all the staff. So thank you for your service. Thank you deeply for your service.
If any of my other board members would like to say a quick little message for Sarah, please feel free. If you want to say anything to Sarah before she...
Well, Sarah, I just want to say, as the one trying to fill your shoes, it's a tall order. It's an honor to sit in your chair, and I've only heard your name about 100 times at every meeting since I've arrived. So you obviously made a huge impression and a huge impact. So thank you.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education recognize Sarah Spalding for 6 years of outstanding service to the students, families, and staff of Weston Public Schools.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Taffy. All in favor? Thank you. And now we have a tremendous list of minutes to approve since we've been having lots of meetings. So if we could please have a motion, and then we'll take any comments or edits.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the minutes from the following meetings: March 25th, 2019, executive session, March 25th, 2019, regular session, April 2nd, 2019, special meeting, April 2nd, 2019, additional special meeting, April 8th, 2019, workshop, April 9th, 2019, new board member orientation workshop, and April 23rd, 2019, executive and regular session.
Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Ruby. Does anyone have any adjustments or comments regarding the minutes? All right. All in favor? Thank you. At this time, we typically have public comment, but just by seeing the members of the public here, I think it probably has to do with a specific agenda item that we're going to be discussing first in our new business section. So we are going to hold public comment until after the presentation regarding the baseball field situation, and then we will open public comment up at that time. There's some new information being presented, and I would just like you to have an opportunity to hear it, and then you may comment, question away. So now, our student reps. Hi, guys.
Hi. So continuing on for some news in athletics, as a member of Girls Lacrosse, and David is the manager too, we're dedicating our game tomorrow to the Lace Up for Pediatric Cancer Fund, where we will be donating proceeds made from 50-50 raffles, donation boxes, and bake sales, both in the JV and varsity games, to a pediatric cancer fund. So we're super excited for that. We've been fundraising and advertising for that, but hopefully you guys can all make it and maybe give a little donation.
Yeah, in the broader scheme of things too, just looking a few weeks into the past, student government held a Spirit Week. That entailed 2 home boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and we actually had a Colony food truck come, so we had about 1,000 to 1,500 people stop by and order pizza from that. So that was a huge success. We're both seniors, so we've certainly gone through internship preparation, whether that be through the online sign-up. We actually had 3 speakers come in from respective HR, offices and talk about what does it mean to be a high school intern. And then we've also been doing a lot of community service. We did an Earth Day cleanup, and we also volunteered with the Open Door Shelter. So yeah, we're keep plugging away, and we're extremely honored to be here. And the days are winding down, but thank you guys again.
You guys are welcome to stay, but I know you're probably prepping for APs and things like that. So if you need to bid us adieu, thank you for your time. And now for our first new business of the evening, an update on baseball and softball field maintenance.
Yes, we have a PowerPoint with an update that Rich Rudel will provide for all of us. Mark Berkowitz has rearranged the schedule to stay on for a bit through this. I appreciate the flexibility in letting this statement get shared, which will, I think, help the public comment in terms of what we're doing right up to literally the last couple of days on what truly is not a good situation. As I've been very clear, I, as superintendent, own responsibility for this situation this year, and issues of accountability have been dealt with, but we want to provide a full perspective quickly, historically, on how we got to where we are, but not a lot on that. A bit on where we are at this point, but we have been moving on solutions as we look into the upcoming year, some of which is going to definitely have to entail the town. We want to be very clear with you as a board as to what we're working on here. So, Rich, you want to start into it?
So prior to 2011, Parks and Rec was maintaining all athletic fields on Weston Public School campuses. They use an outside contractor called Stex Landscaping out of Bethel. In July of 2011, the Board of Ed voted to expand its grounds department to maintain all athletic fields within the use, using district staff without the use of an outside contractor. So it was at that point that Stex Landscaping left Weston. And at that point in time, the district employed 5 employees to maintain all its athletic fields. Since 2011, the district's ground department has been reduced. We currently have 4 FTEs. However, due to injuries, illnesses, and redeployment of staff, that's often left with a department of 2 people to maintain the entire campus plus the athletic fields. So on March 11th, the district did terminate the employment of the working grounds foreman. He was the point person for the maintenance of all athletic fields on campus. So from March 11th to about mid-April, the district had only 2 groundskeepers available due to terminations and injuries. So we do have some issues with our fields. We've had 47% more rainfall than normal for the month of March and April, which equates to about 3.54 inches above normal. We're into a 3-year pattern where we've had dramatically increased precipitation levels. We actually got this analysis from the district's meteorologist. As you can see, this year we've got 3.54 inches above normal. The year before, 3.2. The year before that, 3.3. The fields that have the most significant drainage issues is Revson's varsity field and then the JV softball field and the middle school field. The fields were improperly constructed. The sloping isn't perfect, which contributes to a lot of pooling of waters in certain areas. So after heavy rain events, you'll see a lot of water pooling in the outfield of Revson Field, between center and right field, and also parts of the infield, and really the whole left side of the middle school after heavy rain occurs. So the sloping problems, coupled with heavier than normal rainfall, has led to an increased field damage and unplayable conditions throughout the season. So district staff that we do have spent upwards of 8 hours a day draining areas of Revson Field and the middle school field with pumps to remove waterlocked areas. This is in addition to their daily responsibilities in other areas on campus when they get pulled off. So we have these images that we wanted to show. You can see the actual dead spots on the field. So the first one actually being the middle school softball field. All those brown areas kind of by the third base side and in the outfield pooling of water has essentially caused a lot of dead areas within the outfield and near third base. You can see the same on the JV field. This winter, we actually, someone drove on the outfield of the JV field at Revson, and those marks on the outfield behind shortstop and in left field are essentially tread marks on the outfield. And the heavy rain plus the poor drainage has led the field to be too slow to properly repair it. When equipment goes on to roll the field, it ends up causing more ruts than you had before. And the final image of the varsity field, you can see those drainage, those dead spots really in center and right field again, portions of the infield, third base and shortstop as well. So when we get heavy rain events, what you end up seeing is a pooling of water in those areas that's damaging the field both in the short term and the long term.
No. Yeah, we can hear it. Okay.
There we go. So during late March to District redeployed its plumber, its carpenter, and its head custodian to assist with field preparation until the district could finalize a proposal for regular field maintenance from an external contractor. The district did bring in 5 vendors to review the field. Work would include scarifying the infield, applying additional clay, pumping waterlogged areas, rebuilding the pitcher mound, installing batting cages, applying drying agent, liming the field. So on April 2nd, the superintendent did award a contract for daily maintenance of both Revson fields to Lawns by Liam. On April 11th, the superintendent awarded a contract for daily maintenance of all the softball fields, including the middle school field, the North House field, the Onion Barn field, Coley field, Firehouse field, to Diamond Landscapes. On April 22nd, Lawns by Liam did indicate to us he wanted to end its contract with the Weston Public Schools due to concerns about poor drainage on Revson Field. The poor drainage made it too difficult to provide regular maintenance than it otherwise would have been. So on April 24th, the superintendent expanded the contract for daily field maintenance to Diamond Landscapes to cover both Revson Fields. So Diamond Landscapes currently provides maintenance to both Revson Fields and all the softball fields. So long term, we do know we have a number of items that we have to look into. The administration has proposed, and the Board of Ed has supported allocating additional funds up to $133,000 for regular outside maintenance of the baseball and softball fields. That'll include Diamond Landscaping in the fiscal year 20 budget. On April 26th, the district brought in a leading athletic field construction company to review Revson Field and the middle school softball field. We're waiting for a proposal for a drainage solution at both fields. Once we get that, we will share that with the Board of Education's facility committee. His expectation is that we are going to need some type of drainage in the outfield of Revson Field that will likely point to, if you are familiar with it, the creek that goes between the parking lot by the middle school and Revson Field. The district also brought in an athletic field company to submit proposals to resod all of Revson Field. However, without proper drainage installed, the new sod would fail, and that would essentially have to be replaced over and over again. So we also brought in a number of artificial turf companies to survey Revson Field to provide proposals for installing artificial turf. We are waiting for those proposals, but early estimates are about $1.25 to $1.35 million to turf just the varsity field at Revson. So a long-term discussion with the town of Weston will have to commence once we have all the information and all the proposals. And then again, we will also have to coordinate with Parks and Recreation and the town of Weston on management of athletic fields going forward.
All right, Board, do you have any questions at this time?
Yeah. Maybe I'll get started. So there's a lot to unpack in this presentation. Maybe let's start at the beginning. So as we, winter ended, we enter into the spring. What was the sequence of events that led us to not be prepared? Now, this field hasn't been good. My son played on this field in the early 2000s. It's just never been good. But we played on it every year. So what is the series of events that led us to not be ready for the spring? So I want to start at the beginning and kind of walk through this, because you have a lot of really good stuff here, but I want to make sure that we have a real understanding of what happened and where do we go from here.
So in the fall, when the season ended, facilities department, grounds department, primarily grounds department, really, should have did a final scarifying of the infield. We did end up opening the field earlier because the weather was nice. We didn't really have a lot of snow in March. The point in time where the field really started to get prepped in the spring by the working grounds foreman, that individual was administrative leave. Then we had another groundskeeper who was out as well, so we did not have the staff at the time to apply to the infield that really quite damaged. It was at that time, once really the snow melted, that the ruts in the outfield of the JV varsity field were discovered. But again, the person who was primarily responsible was out on leave along with the
All right. Who has, whose responsibility is it ultimately to get the fields ready? Meaning, there has to be someone that has a checklist that says, you know what, we have a baseball game coming up, like, if the field's ready.
Baseball schedule is provided by the athletic department, the athletic director, and it's the working grounds foreman and the grounds crew who are responsible for maintaining all the athletic fields.
Right. So next year, so now we've kind of have a interim solution for how we're going to go forward this year. How does this, so if you play forward and we go through the next winter, exactly what happens as we close the fields and we kind of get ready for a new season, what exactly is going to happen?
So we would like to see what the drainage proposal looks like, depending on where that comes in at, and bring that forward to possibly perform that work this summer. To bring that forward to perform work that this summer, if that's possible. We would like to maintain and continue forward with an outside contractor to maintain the fields, close the fields down, and then bring the fields back up. The ground staff that we have, just simply, we do not have the staff, the resources available within the budget, or the expertise on staff to adequately maintain the fields the way they should.
And so,
Tony, if I may add to that, I mean, a big change here would be, and the board has agreed to this, is to make sure that we are funding fully an external contractor to provide us the staff power to do this. Because over the last several years, we've been reducing staff in the facilities, maintenance areas, frankly, to balance the budget, and that caught up with us here. So we're going to propose that we go contract out, which we've started to do with Diamond Landscapes. They've been doing a thorough job right now. They are not dissuaded by the drainage problems. They had 8, 9 people out there today on all the fields. They're working hard at it. If they continue to produce, we would keep them on through November, so the field gets put away correctly, which did not happen. We did not put the field away correctly. So no matter what the weather, you can then open up more effectively, have your clay ordered, all the rest as of the fall. But that would be contracted out. We've already done that to be ready for that. The drainage issues are quite serious, and that's why, understanding we're now in 3 years of increased precipitation, we're likely to have that. The other part of this is we'll have proposals for the board and maybe the town to consider on fundamentally addressing the drainage issues that when this, Liam's work, one of the best in the region said, I can't do this anymore because it's not working. So it's having contracting will do the immediate maintenance because we don't have the staff to do that.
Right.
That was part of the problem in terms of what precipitated this. Have that committed to, but then also say long term, and hopefully by the time we hit June or so, have some sense of what that work is. Can we get it done this summer?
right. So the new contractor is in place?
Yes.
Now, we're going to look at ultimately some fixes to be able to improve the drainage and work with this particular new contractor to do that.
Yes.
Right. And then so that kind of takes us to more tactical stuff, right? But what do you think the long-term plan is for the field? Do you think fixing the drainage is enough to be able to then improve the field to the point where it's a field that we could be proud to play on, or do we need to do additional work?
So depending on the drainage repair and the results, it would probably address 70 to 75% of the issues on Revson Field. The middle school field was built on wetlands, which does not help maintaining a field. It's not an ideal location for a baseball field, considering it is on wetlands.
Right.
One of the reasons we did approach a turf company was to see whether or not that is an option. It is the most expensive option. We would be looking at between $1.2 and $1.3 million to turf the field, but then that would just be one field.
So when do you anticipate having some of the estimates back? Because I think, as you alluded, Dr. McCursey, depending on the magnitude of the numbers, this is going to need to be a cooperative effort between this board and other boards in town to determine, if we're going to move forward with a larger project such as that.
We're hoping for the drainage quote to come back within a week or two. The full proposals from some of the turfing companies might take a little bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think it's a really important point that...
Melissa, make sure you're speaking directly into your mic so the
okay.
audience can...
I'm going to hold it. I think how we maintain our fields in this town conveys, whether intentionally or unintentionally, how we care for and support our athletes. And I think one thing that struck me in reviewing some of these materials, and I actually went over to the fields and walked them myself. My kids play at Bisceglie, so I'm very familiar with those fields. And I think, not being an athlete myself, but when I can tell the difference immediately in what you're seeing in the high school varsity and junior varsity fields versus what you're seeing down at the Little League fields. And what struck me is also the disparity in the maintenance and the responsiveness to the girls versus the boys' fields. I mean, I haven't heard much conversation right now about the North House field. I know that there's problems there too in the right field with the sinkhole. I know that when we had the contract done with Lawns by Liam, that we didn't include the girls' fields. I know that our varsity softball athletes share their field with, elementary school students who are running on the lawn constantly, and various other town sports that use that field. So I think when we're thinking about some of these ideas, I think we need to have a more comprehensive, holistic approach to this. What I'm hearing is that there might be some fundamental problems with some of the other fields. Let's also include the North House field when we're looking at that. And let's make sure we really understand the underlying issues. I think that the Revson fields were built on some type of septic system. Is it possible that that contributes to the drainage issues? And if so, are we able to repair that in a way that we can really go forward with? Or are we looking at a situation where we need to consider new fields? I think what would be most helpful is convening some type of committee or group that can really look at this problem. I think this is much more substantial than just trying to find little fixes each year. I think it's a real fundamental problem. And when you look at other towns in our district and what their fields look like, it's a remarkable difference than what our fields look like. And I just don't think that that sends the right message to our athletes, our boys and our girls.
Yeah, let me underscore a couple. I mean, a couple reasons why the printed presentation tonight is so important is that this is fields plural. It has to be baseball and softball. And intentionally, Liam was not contracted for the softball initially, but within a couple of days, we had brought on Diamond Landscapes focused on softball because we had to do that. The terrible, terrible situation, there's no other way to put it, was Revson Field. Softball was right behind it, but not as severe. But we then quickly brought Diamond on for that reason. And going forward, it has to be both, for all the reasons you're saying. Also, there's nothing in here about doing this incrementally or small. Fundamentally, Revson is a poorly designed field. Again, one of the best field landscapers in the region walked away from the job. Highly respectable person, did it with great respect, but said his professional reputation was at risk trying to keep working a field. There's a swimming pool out there. There's septic fields out there. We have drainage issues from neighbors, which we have to address with full respect to the neighbors. So this problem has been sitting there unattended to. So for my time here, I'm taking blame.
Bill,
I can't change. Let me finish. So going forward, it has to be definitely a systematic approach to get Revson right, to get the softball fields right, and we have to go back to the town and say, this is a shared deal, and how do we do this correctly? And so that's why we've already gone out to get bids on a full range of systematic solutions. Turfing is very, very expensive. Other areas do that. We can't leap to turfing because of the septic issues, the drainage issues, all the rest, but we have to be systematic about this. So I just want to be really clear. And to the board's credit, in a very tight budget situation, to find $130,000 is a big deal. It's a big deal. So that, I mean, you have been committed to that and committed to moving with us to say, let's job this out, let's go to contracting, because we can't, bring on unnecessary staff. So,
Bill, I just wanted to ask a technical question, and that is when Liam ended their contract and you extended the Diamond Landscaping contract to include Revson, is the Diamond Landscaping folks any more confident in their ability to maintain the field that Liam, the renowned professionals, stepped away from?
Diamond's a much bigger company. They have a lot more resources. They had concerns about Revson too. They wanted to walk the fields and they wanted to walk it in a rain event before they were willing to commit. But they have a lot more people. They have a lot more resources. Liam at the time wasn't even sure he could do more than just Revson's varsity. He ended up taking the varsity and the JV. He had at one point thought he could maybe do the middle school. He did back away from that just because he's just not as big of a company, doesn't have as much resources. Diamond has a much bigger staff to do that. They do take care of Bisegli Field for the town, but they had concerns as well.
Yeah. I also just want to, thank you, Rich. I also just want to reiterate how important it is to include a number of avenues for folks whose children are playing on these fields to be involved in the dialogue beyond this meeting. And I know you're planning on articulating some of those ways that folks can participate. It's obviously, you know, one way is to be here and to make public comment. Unfortunately, it's just public comment, and that's frustrating for a group that want to have a discussion. And so I'm sort of acknowledging that now and just saying, let's make sure we itemize ways that everybody in this room can participate in the process via committees that are being struck and attending other, you know, facilities meetings, et cetera.
Well, obviously, as some of these quotes for work start coming in, the first place they'll be presented will be at our monthly facilities subcommittee meeting, which those are open meetings. The agendas are posted on the website, and any documentation used in those meetings gets posted. So even if you can't come in person, once that quote is in, they are public documents and they are available for review. I did spend some time speaking with Chris Spalding on Friday, because as you've heard, some of these numbers get very large. And if we are going down the avenue of, you know, even considering turfing one of these facilities, we have to think about the initial funding of a turf. We have to think about replacement funds for those turfs. We currently have 2 fields that have a structure in place for their replacements. That structure's being questioned by some organizations right now. So there are broader town issues that are going to need to be addressed as we go down this path. And I would encourage our baseball and softball families, if we reach a point that we are doing some sort of joint town-wide committee, please make sure you're picking appropriate representatives to be involved in the process. You know, senior families who have a lot of experience in town, newer families who are going to be here to see this through. Unfortunately, as I told one parent in an email last week or over the weekend, unfortunately, this is not an item where we're going to be able to give you an answer tonight. I can tell you, this board and the administration, we want the best for our athletes. We just kind of got hit with a perfect storm of issues this spring. I think Dr. McCursey and his team have accepted full responsibility for that. And this board is, we are looking at everything, trying to figure out and question everything to try to make sure we're moving the process forward. This is where we are at this point in time. But we are moving forward on this as quickly as possible to have some ideas about a path forward.
The one thing I just want, we talk a lot about adding more staff, but I think, and I probably others can agree with me, staff doesn't solve the drainage issues, right, as a whole that clearly your son was combating with 20 years ago. My comment is I think that it's opportunities like this that communication is imperative. And if anything, administration owns over communicating to these parents. These are children's athletic careers at risk here. For any child who wants to go further and play, have a great high school career and even play in college and maybe even beyond. And so I think over communicating on a daily basis is not a nice to have, it's a need to have. And I think there's a huge opportunity here for administration to learn from this opportunity or learn from the situation and correct going forward. Even if it daily emails, just adding something new to the situation just shows that we're on top of it and we're moving the ball forward and not just sending out emails when everything is ticked and tied nice with a bow. I think parents are upset and they want to hear from you daily.
right, at this time, we are going to open up for public comment. We are, because there's quite a few of you, we are going to limit it to 3 minutes per person. Dan Doak, can you put the microphone up on the podium, please? Just so we can make sure everyone has make sure it's on for me, please. Thank you. So when you come up to the podium, you need to give us your full name and the street you live on here in Weston. And then after that, we will start the timer, and you will have 3 minutes to share your thoughts with us. As Taffy alluded, in our public meetings, it is a meeting for us to conduct our business. We can hear from you. It is not a public hearing where there is a back and forth. I understand that that can sometimes be frustrating, but rest assured, I think you've heard tonight, the board is committed to helping resolve this issue. We will be keeping notes. You are more than welcome to also email us with further questions. And as we move through the process with facility committee meetings, our monthly meetings, and everything else that's going on, that will be an opportunity for us to possibly address those specific questions at that time. All right? So who would like to go first? Come on up.
Hi, my name's Maureen Weinbrum. I live on Powderhorn Hill. I'm a 1989 graduate of Weston High School. I was a 3-sport student here. Mrs. Diorio was my Spanish teacher. I am here to tell you that not only did you fail these kids, but you continue to fail them. You know, we're sitting here, we're talking about fields. Last year, I watched 3 players be seriously injured on that field. Where were you? Where were you when these kids were getting hurt right and left on these fields? Where were you when game after game, these kids had nowhere to play? They had to go to other fields. I happen to have a senior who's a captain who has the opportunity to play in college. This season has been a disaster for these boys. You have failed him. You have failed my son. You've failed a lot of these kids here. And you continue to fail them because we sit here and you're giving stats that aren't true. You're talking about rainfall. This has nothing to do with rainfall. This has to do with neglect, lack of accountability, and you continue to do it. Rocky did nothing. Rocky did nothing for 2 years as a member of the Diamond Club board. Rocky was asked to build a pitching mound so kids like my son could go up there and practice pitching. It was never done. It's still not done. Those fields were out of sight, out of mind. You stored porta potties and turf up there all season. Nobody knew if the porta potties, when they fell over, if sewage had spilled. Again, you failed those kids, and you continue to fail them. There are Little League kids that are up there every weekend. If you had any idea what those fields look like, it was dangerous. And I'm surprised nobody got hurt. And I know none of you are looking at me and making eye contact, but I'll tell you this. This is bad. This is really bad. And this is a shame because I grew up in this town. I love this town. I watched my brother play baseball in this town. This is an amazing town, and now we're a joke because we go to other fields and they're gorgeous and they're beautiful, and they had 3 inches of rain this year. Same as us, but every day they go out there and they play because nobody paid attention to these fields. You failed the kids, and they continue to be failed when you sit here and you say we're crazy parents. All we want is our kids to play something they love and enjoy it, and they can't. And I'm sorry that it seems harsh, and if you want to call me crazy, I'm okay with that, but I'm going to fight for what's right, and these kids deserve better. And my son is coming up. We've got lots of Little League families here. Everybody just wants the right thing. So we can sit here now and we can say we have all these options, but how are we going to make sure it doesn't fail again? Because nobody was accountable for who was supposed to be taking care of these fields. Nobody was accountable. That's all I have.
Hi, Melissa Gladstone. I live on Tub Spring Drive. I'm going to speak for softball. The PowerPoint that you just showed, softball was this much. Completely unacceptable. Girls are just as important as boys. And you guys really have to start showing that. Our season started on March 16th. I have my little notes here. The first update I got about the field when my daughter, who plays JV, was being kicked off of the field, which was then going into varsity and trickled down and things canceled, was on April 2nd. And the only reason I got that update was because I sent you an email, a very strong email, what is going on, which you then forwarded to Mark to respond to me and Rich to respond to me. Then I got another, well, those emails went back and forth a bunch of times, and I appreciate your response. Thank you, Mark. Those went back and forth a few times. The last update I got one on the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. We are now at the 29th. My daughter got kicked off of the poor drainage field, which quite honestly is only part of the problem. When the season started, we also had no bases, no netting. Then when the bases were placed down after they were on order 3 weeks into the season, they weren't even placed correctly. So the girls then got put onto the varsity field, which is just fine with the terrible fields, but regardless, which then now trickles down to the Little League. Those girls then had to wait an hour and a half with Wilton there, which was mortifying for Little League, and then they didn't even get to play because we have no lights there. So this is not just about a small little picture. This is big. And you guys have to do better for our kids. You have to do better for us. Communication. I applaud you guys for what you're saying because you're right on, and thank you guys. But you really need to communicate. You need to tell us, good or bad, it doesn't matter. Just let us know. We should not have to fight for playable fields. That's all I have to say.
Hi, I'm Stephen Polizzi, 54 Blue Spruce Circle in Weston. I certainly agree with what you guys are saying, and I've learned over the last couple of weeks and months about the situation going on with the fields, and it certainly is disappointing. It affects a lot of people currently that I'm friends with here, and certainly I think about the future of the program, not just currently. And let me tell you why. I was on the Weston Little League board for 5 years. 2 of those years I spent as the president. Over the years, from registration point of view, Weston has never lost registration. We have bumped up or either stayed constant as compared to other towns within our district that their registration numbers have dropped. So you guys better listen. There is a group of upcoming kids that are passionate about baseball. There are people in this room that have seen us go to districts, get very close to winning, and this year we finally brought home the first district championship. We're here. Weston baseball is on the map. Don't neglect us. Don't forget us. Thank you.
Ian Forrest, 43 Northfield Woods. Look, I think it's easy to sit here and make this about fields. This is not about fields. This is about incompetence and accountability. We've had a septic issue in the middle school. It's easy to forget. That wasn't finished. We've had an embezzlement scandal this year with gasoline. Field neglect, lack of resources. This is not just about fields. This is about a culture where there is an inherent lack of accountability and responsibility for doing what's right. So it's easy to say, show us a map of the fields, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix the drainage. That's not the problem. The problem is sitting around here and having real accountability for what is going on. The superintendent should absolutely consider resigning. This year has been an absolute disaster in how you can stand here and say you have solutions for the values which are being on display. The embezzlement scandal alone, the way you've handled the fields. The issue is accountability. It's culture. And whether or not you want to fundamentally address that won't be addressed just by simply by saying, hey, we're going to fix drainage. Now, I get rainfall. How much drainage was there with baseball and lacrosse fields? If you want to do what's right, you start at its core. You start taking accountability and responsibility for the decisions or the lack of decisions, not just addressing some drainage issues in the outfield on Refson.
Hi, my name is Joe Castro, 16 Charles Path, Weston. Following up on that of accountability, I'd like to know, and I know you guys can't answer this, but something you guys need to look at yourselves is, we've had this field built and supposedly repaired numerous times, and yet we have the same issue. Why has no one gone after the original contractor or the people who have done the work? If someone ever did substandard work on my house, I would absolutely look for recourse against them. And I don't understand, over all these years with all these problems, that that the Board of Ed has never gone after the people who did substandard work. I mean, that's just fiscal responsibility. Talk about dropping the ball, that's definitely dropping the ball. One of the other things, I am a little confused as to why, when we went to get contractors outside, why 2 different contractors were hired and not one just contractor. Just economies of scale. You got to get better pricing from 1 versus 2. And if Diamond Landscapes has an enormous crew, they should have been the overall choice. And going back to one of the things that someone else mentioned, the amount of rain is irrelevant. They have the same amount of rain in Wilton and the same amount of rain up in Reading, and we've been playing at Barlow and we've been playing in Wilton. So that's, to me, that's just a cop-out. And it just comes down to accountability here. And when you guys talk about the cost of turf being 1.2 or 1.3 million, I hope someone is doing a feasibility study as to what the cost of maintenance per year is going to be versus the cost of a field, because I'm telling you, the cost is going to be at least $125,000 to $150,000 a year to maintain that field the right way. And if you're looking at a lifespan of 10 years, your break even is pretty close. And you know what? Even if the turf is a little bit more, not to have the problems that we have now is worth it. And also, I'm sure there's a way that whatever the cost is, it can be financed. It doesn't have to be a check all at once up front. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dana Dufresne. I live at 4 Kettle Creek Road. I went back and looked at the minutes, which I hope that the board did, as well as the selectmen. So if you go and look at the minutes from years ago, when Woody was the selectman, it actually will say, why are we not suing the contractor? Did any of you look at that? Okay. I'm here to represent the children, the students, the players, both boys and girls. We pay an enormous amount of taxes compared to other towns. We choose to live here because of the simple, quote-unquote, life that Weston can offer for blue school or blue ribbon schools. But let me tell you, if you talk to realtors, and if realtors have to drive a family who maybe has either a baseball or softball student who's going to be entering high school, they will look at that field, both fields, softball and baseball, and laugh. It is time that you guys put your money where your mouth is. I am tired of hearing continuous rhetoric. We will look into it. We're going to fix it. We're going to tell you when. This spring was a debacle, and I'm going to look directly at the superintendent, because the first correspondence we ever heard was after a group of parents, irate, wrote you a letter. It falls on your shoulders. It falls on the Board of Education's shoulders. You are letting our students down. It cannot happen anymore. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ronnie Licatar, Catbrier Road.
I'm the current president of Weston Little League. Those of you who know me know that I'm very passionate about this sport. I have a daughter who graduated from the high school last year. She played softball for 4 years. And I have 3 sons. I have a 6th grader, kindergartner, and a 3-year-old. It's quite the spread, and they all play baseball as well. But I'm not here just for my boys who are going to be going through the system. I'm also here to represent the 269 boys and girls who are currently playing baseball and softball in our Little League. Even though our numbers pale in comparison to our surrounding towns, my fellow board members and I work hard to put together a competitive developmental program so that we not only compete against these other towns around us, but we also act as our feeder program so that the high school has quality athletes for their sports. Our efforts are paying off. As Steve Polizzi just said, last summer our Little League team won the district championship for the first time in our town's history. And this year we're going to be looking to repeat that. So I just want to remind the board that it's not just the high school families that are going to be watching you guys closely and keeping an eye on this. We also have dozens of families like mine who are going to have kids playing on Revson in the near future, or who have girls that are currently playing on the softball fields. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Mike Hensinger. I live on Laurel Lake West. And look, my son's a freshman, played baseball in Little League. Look, we've been paying attention to the fields for a number of years, and someone said perfect storm. I mean, this perfect storm has gone on year after year after year. And so it's not just the fields, it's not just the drainage, although those are absolutely part of it. It is accountability, but it's also the baseball program itself from a priority perspective. It was pervasive, the way the program was run, the coaching. I've got examples of when my son was an 8th grader and they had sort of the going into high school session, and they had all the kids go into the gym and meet all the coaches of the programs and things like that. And the only program that wasn't there was baseball. And he got asked by the basketball coach and by the football coach and by the track coach. And he went in there to go look for the baseball coaches, and they weren't even there. So it's I think what's happening is it's becoming apparent in the fields, and it has become apparent in the fields because it's been a bigger issue. And there's countless examples of how the baseball program does not get the priority and does not get the attention that it deserves. As you hear from the folks kind of coming up in Little League and things like that, I think this is a great town with great potential and a lot of passionate people around baseball. And I do think that the things I heard today don't make me feel confident that we'll be in a different place next year. So I would challenge you to think about what you're really going to do differently starting now, so that we're not having these same conversations for the next year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Frubies. I run our softball program, Weston Little League. I'm here. I have a senior baseball player, so I've been on these reps and fields for 6 years now. We worked really hard in Little League to keep our fields pristine, and then once our boys leave Little League, we're left with these reps and fields, which have really been bad for a long time. I know you talked about staffing and that you reduced the staffing, but frankly, the staffing that we had wasn't really helping the problem. They don't know what they're doing with fields, the clay construction, the grass, the most simple things to a field were not done correctly. My son is moving on, but I am passionate. I'm still on the Little League board. I'm passionate about baseball, but I'm also quite passionate about softball. I run our Little League program from kindergartner up to 8th grade.
I use the same fields that the high school players use, which I'm happy to do. But, you know, frankly, it's embarrassing to me. I go around for Little League, we play all other towns. All their fields are much better than ours. And these are the high school players that are on these fields as well. So we share with them, and I'm embarrassed for them. And I heard a lot about baseball tonight, and I do care very much about baseball, but I want to hear more about softball. So that JV middle school field is a disaster. And, you know, you mentioned it, and you said something about how it's built on a swamp. Then you said something about why you're having the turf company come in, but you're mixing up your fields again. That middle school field is built on a swamp as a softball field, which is not what you were talking about turfing. So I just want to make sure softball is represented and represented well. Currently, all my discussions with the players, they really feel like they're second-class citizens to baseball, and we're not even getting much with baseball. So, you know, it's something that I think really needs to be addressed within the administration, that anything you do in baseball, so I hear this $130,000 number. I know Liam's contract was $130,000. Where's the softball money? And, you know, you targeted Revson. I know it was a big problem. That's a varsity field. The North House wasn't as big of a problem, but you also contracted to do the JV baseball field, and you asked to be, you know, not do the JV softball field at that time. I know you did it 7 days later, 8 days later, but frankly, I don't think you had any contractors in to do anything when you signed the contract with Liam to do both of the baseball fields. So don't lose sight of softball. I worked really hard with this Little League program to build some quality athletes. They're very excited to play in high school. 75% of my kids play in high school from Little League. So they need a field, and they need to feel like they are equal to the boys. That's all I have to say.
All right, with that, we're going to
Amy Moskoff, Treadwell Lane. Give me 1 second. I'm here also to speak about softball. I'm also a graduate of Weston High School. Not going to say the year. I think it was '89. Also, my daughter plays Little League softball. And again, I just felt like the presentation kind of glossed over the softball fields. I didn't say much about how you're going to address North House Field, which I believe there's a sinkhole there that was brought up years ago and then poorly repaired, and now it's a problem again. My daughter is walking from the intermediate school to the middle school and then being bumped off and told to go to the Onion Barn with no communication, and now I think they finally got it that she has to go to the Onion Barn. But for a while her whole team was getting as far as the North House field, and then not having, other teams were on the field and they were by themselves, and then kind of being told, no, you got to walk to the Onion Barn, which is really unconscionable as far as I'm concerned. They're 11. I think that even aside from all of this, this rain and everything, last year we were at the middle school field. There was one broken bench that was a hazard. It was kind of wobbly, and the kids could have gotten severely injured. It was fixed once we called and complained about it. But then no other bench showed up on the other side, so when teams would come to play, there was one bench for one team that was not long enough for the entire team to sit on. It's just such a discrepancy between what the boys have and what the girls have. And this is something that, you know, we discuss all the time in our house. It's not okay. You can say that you're addressing softball and baseball, but you need to actually act like you're treating them the same. And in Little League especially, there is a huge discrepancy in the attention and the quality that the girls get and the boys get. And so I just am very concerned going forward that when the funding goes forward that, you know, the softball is addressed. Her whole season basically last year was canceled because of rain. The fields weren't able to be played. And the other towns, their fields, even when it rained, you know, they were able to be played on the next day. Ours don't drain, they don't dry out. Let's see. better baseball dugouts. We have no home run fences. We have no concessions in Little League. I don't know. I mean, the list goes on, but I just think that, as other people said, the girls feel like second-class citizens, and that is really not okay. That's all I have to say.
All right, I want to thank everyone for coming out, and I want to thank everyone for sharing your thoughts with us on this matter. This process will continue, and we will be in touch. Thank you. Now, Phase 2 feasibility study.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to present this report on behalf. Can you hear me? How's that? Can you hear me now?
No, we're going to get a microphone.
Good evening. How's that? All right, here we go. Can you hear me now? Okay, can somebody get me a mic, please?
To get
Okay, third time's a charm. Here we go. All right, great. So, joining me this evening is Michelle Miller from Silver Petrocelli. Bill Silver is here as well on behalf of the Facilities Feasibility Advisory Committee. I'm here to share the following report. Rich Rudel, Michelle will join me in answering any questions at the end of this presentation. But you recall at the last month's board meeting, we provided historical information, regarding the facilities, the use of the facilities, the configuration of the grades in those facilities. We also provided information on the Phase 1 report. And Rich talked about the first study, which has led us to this evening's presentation in looking at Phase 2. So essentially, after the Phase 1 study, and there was a price tag of $67 million to renovate the 4 schools, we took a look and said, is there a more cost-effective way? That was really the essential question. Is there a more cost-effective way to address our facilities needs throughout the campus? And could we do that by moving toward a 3-site campus model? So that is why we've engaged now with Silver Petrocelli to work on this process with our feasibility committee. The advisory committee has been led by the superintendent and Tony Pesco, our committee chair. We've had several meetings in public. The information, documents, minutes from those meetings will be made, is public, has been made available. We're going to put that in a very convenient place on the website so those can find it. You can see the members there who joined us for this committee. So to frame the work of the committee and for the study, we really were kind of looking at two major scenarios, the two what-ifs. What if we closed the middle school, reallocated the grades to the remaining schools? That's the first scenario. And the second scenario, closing Hurlbut and reallocating the grades to the other schools. Now, we did not look at closing WIS, that our most recent building, built in 2005. Same thing with the high school, that's a flagship, and to recreate the high school. That's why we didn't look at those two schools and reallocating those. So within those scenarios, we looked at 9 options for moving to a 3-site campus and reconfiguring here. With closing the middle school, we had 5 options, A through E, and then with closing Hurlbut, 4 options, A through D. And the advisory committee honed in initially on option E, which maintained the current framework in our elementary schools, but then looked at combining our middle and high school on one site, that's option E, and seeing if there were some efficiencies that could be gained by sharing those resources. By building a new middle school attached adjacent to the high school, could some resources be shared? And could there be savings as a result? But then as we came to the board meeting, I guess it was in February, board members asked to also probe and take a look at option A, which we had initially said because of the large size of an elementary school that we weren't really honing in on that, but there was discussion that led us to say, okay, let's look more deeply at option A with a larger expanded K-5, pre-K to 5 building and moving the middle school program to the WIS. So that then led us to the point where we are now, where we've done the analysis. Michelle Miller has met with our administrative team, our curriculum leaders, has gone into detail bringing information to the advisory committee to share what are the pros and cons of the option A, the option E. We also very early on, for reasons of having larger elementary schools and things of that nature, had discarded 7 of the options and really honed in on these 2. This next slide does a comparison of the phase 1 middle school renovations and additions. We took our phase 1 study, 4 sites, and looked at what are the costs associated with that. You're looking at $37 million to renovate the middle school. And then when you add in the facility conditions for the remaining schools, you're talking, that's where we get the $67 million. Then trying to compare that option to the phase 2 study options, we can see that how much more expensive it is to build a new than it is to renovate, which is essentially what building the option 1E, which was the new middle school connected to a high school, would cost $76 million plus the facilities costs, bringing it to over $100 million. And then the option A, which was expanding to a pre-K to 5 Hurlbut site and converting the WIS to a middle school, again, we're getting to some large numbers. So just to give you a sense of what those figures entail, here's a nice schematic of the floor plan for phase 1, just renovating the middle school, but addressing some critical needs. So for example, having science labs that are fully functional there on in color and brown on the far right-hand side. Those science labs, which were in the center of the building, would then become renovated music buildings, music rooms that we need, renovating the gyms, locker HVAC, electrical, overall building infrastructure work that the middle school sorely would need, and then renovating locker rooms, restrooms, things of that nature. So this would be a full renovation of the middle school, and that's what the $37 million would entail. Here, though, in phase 2, the new middle school connected to the high school, for just the sake of being able to picture this, Michelle has created this schematic. I mean, essentially, it connects the high school building on the right. In brown is a brand new constructed middle school connected to the pool area and gym on the left, and then the existing middle school facility being turned into a parking lot and moving the softball field from its current location, that's the JV softball field, to where we would have another site near the parking lot for the softball field. So you can see new construction, rearrangement of parking, potentially. The buses could come in the front of the building or in the back, but this gives you a sense that there's a lot of new construction work there, and it infringes on the wetlands quite a bit. That construction in the center of it would be the core academic wings. Here we have 6th grade on the first floor, and then piling on 7th grade on the second and 8th grade on the third. In some of the areas where it was thought maybe there could be some shared programs, such as culinary arts, made closest to the high school. But quite frankly, there was very minimal space that could be shared given the specialized nature of a high school program versus a middle school program when it comes to science, music, or even just cafeteria, media center. Middle school needed to have its own space to run its programs. To do that. And you can see a second gym would have to be recreated here as part of the middle school. And as I said, here's the 7th and 8th grade stacked on top for a 3-story core building. So that leads us to the third option that we're comparing this evening. This is the expanded pre-K to 5 building in WIS converted to the middle school. This is the WIS converted to a 6-8 school. You can see on the far right near the property line is where the science classrooms would have to be located. The WIS currently does not have the science classrooms that it would need to run a middle school program, nor does it have the ensemble room. So you can see on the bottom left, music room needs to be created, and some addition to the media center, as well as another gym on the top there that you can see. Over at Hurlbut, just orient you here. On the left side, you can see vertically Weston Road, and then the entrance to School Road. It goes off to the top of the schematic, and Michelle has sort of designed an entry off of School Road into the loop, in front of the school. You could see in brown there's a significant amount of construction that would need to take place to accommodate the additional students. We're talking 800 student population. We'd have to figure out where the softball field would go. This has the new parking at the North House side. It has an assumption built in that the senior center, that space would need to be recouped in order to have enough classrooms. So there are a lot of things built into this schematic. And so a new cafeteria built as well, dealing with playgrounds and so on and so forth, to do that number of students here. And again, this just gives you more of a sense of the layout. The existing gym would be turned into science classrooms. On the left, you'd have the new gym, because you need to be able to partition parts of the gym in order to accommodate all the classes. And you see the cafeteria kitchen space on the far left, and the old kitchens would be repurposed into other classrooms, Spanish classrooms, I think, listed here. Certainly North House would need additional classrooms with the 2 stories that would be added. So this really takes into account the number of students and the number of classrooms and specialized spaces that would be needed. I don't expect you to be able to necessarily read this from this slide, but this is going to show you the 3 options and the pros and cons of each compared with each other for the educational, logistical, and the financial standpoints. And so what I've done in the next slide is just taken it one option at a time. So phase 1, this will give you a sense. Obviously, from a financial standpoint, it's the least expensive option. It addresses the major programmatic needs of the middle school, the mechanical needs, and one of the logistical issues would be, you have to relocate students as you're doing the work, just to kind of give you a sense of the pros and cons. The second option, the new middle school connected to the high school, you do get a new facility, allow programs that you've had before, family consumer science, you can bring Then we have the expanded pre-K to 5 and WISC conversion. One of the drawbacks of this is that you're taking your newest school and you're actually doing significant construction, turning it from its original intent of an intermediate school to a middle school. One thing it does do from an educational standpoint is it eliminates the transition from a K2 to a 3-5 school. So you have a continuum pre-K to 5, which would be a nice advantage of we did go into this knowing that it would be an unusually large elementary school. The last time this district was at 2,300 students was in 2001. And we were at 3 sites at that point. The WIS hadn't been built yet. We had Kinderland as an alternative space, plus we had 19 portables on campus. So that was when that need for 4 sites was so as you can glean preliminary findings in terms of looking at the 3 site options, the costs are greater to go to 3 sites. And it is a challenge when you're migrating those students to different buildings, how to configure that. So in terms of that third bullet, I think I just want to kind of hone in on that. Given the data presented to the advisory committee, the administration, committee does not come to a conclusion that a 3-site option exists that improves the educational outcome and warrants the extra. In terms of where we go from here, we want to, I think there's one request to the board to just get all this information in one location where it all can be accessed and reviewed. The board will at some point come to a consensus on the best option of 3 presented in this report. Also have conversations with the town bodies, having a selected option, but also bringing other considerations and options, keeping things on the table for discussion with the town board, and then continue that conversation. But once there's support for a particular option, then to be able to move forward and move into the ed spec and design work. But in the interim, we still have, facility needs, need to move forward with a facilities plan. Obviously, this process takes time, but we still need to take care of our facilities, at the present time and keep doing that. So with that, Rich, Michelle, and Bill, we're here for your questions.
Actually have just a comment before we open it up to questions. I think that when you look at the presentation, especially some people haven't seen it before, could come up with a number of options that we really didn't go down the road to consider. But what I want to do is maybe just step back a little bit and look at it more broadly. This is kind of where I'm coming from, to see if anyone kind of shares in this or has other thoughts. Renovating the middle school had a price tag of $37 million, and then the facilities conditions, which need to be tackled over the next 10 years, right, which is, forms part of the 10-year plan, adds another $30 million or so, all right? So really, when we look at 3 site options and the 2 that we honed into, really the question is, and this was a surprise for me because I was of the mind that going into this that potentially you can actually move, the students into 3 sites with minimal amount of construction. But when you look at the curricular and co-curricular needs, in terms of what you need to do to each building as you're migrating grades, it really appears that the construction costs start mounting up considerably, which was a bit of a surprise to me. So whether these are the 2 options that you hone in on, or there's a number of other options, I think you would come to the same conclusion that you really need to consider whether moving to 3 sites is really worth significantly more cost, simply because of the fact that when you start new construction, it appears that the cost really mounts up pretty quickly. Now, again, this is based on the work that's done by the committee. I think that it's really important to complete this, to open it up really to more of town constituents and experts there, to basically take another set of eyes on this to see if there's other options or things that we've missed, or just generally, I think it's good to dot the I's and cross the T's by, next step, opening it up to a broader town committee to take a look at this and ultimately look at it in the context of overall what the plans are, for the towns and space usage and things like that. But because and I'd love to hear what others have to say, but I find it hard to come up with an option where new construction cost is going to actually result in something where, when you weigh it against the educational outcomes, it's actually going to worth spending the money. But that's kind of my high-level view of what was done, which I think is probably as far as we can go with this particular piece of work, I think. But anyway.
Yeah, Ruby, do you guys have questions? I just have a comment, only because this is a lot of information to take in, and we just got this document at 3:30 p.m. today. So in the future, if something as substantial as this is going to be presented, and you want thoughtful questions and conversation, if we can just get the material earlier, so that we have time to review it.
Yeah, let me just comment on that. We have a rule which I've kept to my entire time here, that substantive reports you get the Wednesday before we walk them in. This time we did a couple hours ahead. We're not expecting full, but I can assure you my rule with the team, and they've met it beautifully. This was the one exception, was Wednesday before Monday night you have these substantive reports. It was impossible in this case to do that. There's a fallback sometimes on Friday. But in this case, I said let's at least get it a couple hours ahead so there's a little more informed conversation. But again, I can assure the board by rule, since I've been here, the Wednesday before the Monday you get a substantive report.
Yeah, with two small children, a couple of hours before a meeting
I get
isn't helping
I
at
take
all.
the point.
Do you guys have any questions?
So,
Bottom of page, sorry. I'll get there. Hang with me.
Yeah, at the bottom of slide, what was that, 19? Yeah.
Yeah, bottom of page 19.
I,
It does read like a recommendation, and I just wondered whether at this stage we're ready for that, or what prompted you to sort of make that conclusion.
I
Yeah, you can-
I
yeah,
have to
help me.
take responsibility for that. I
Sure.
think it's an observation.
Yeah, yeah.
And not I would view it as an observation at this
Okay.
point and not a recommendation.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
Because.
I mean, go
yeah.
ahead, Tony. I mean, when you're done, I'll comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the challenge we have here is we have 40% new board membership, and for some of the board and the administration, we've been at this now since November 2017. So I think when the board's ready to hear this as a recommendation, here's a recommendation, and we gotta take your point. My view is you're not going to resolve this tonight, but I think it was important to get this out before you. Since November 2017, this is the clearest, most succinct set of pages I've seen on probably what's about 1,000 pages worth of material. From where I sit, this is a recommendation, and when you're ready to hear it that way, hear it that way, because I think Tony's brought great leadership to this. I think he's been a critical listener, critical person. I've watched you on a journey through this, Tony, the last several months. So I think I appreciate you saying it's a suggestion. I think where your administration sits, where your professionals in this district sit, almost to a person, if not 100%, they would say this is the recommendation. Mm-hmm. Because I think we got into this question back in, Ellen was chair, it was that $60 million price tag that said that's too expensive, how to review this. There was not any educational interest in doing this. It was about dollars. And so we went into it quite thoroughly to come up with at least the dollar answer, which you can see a very significant difference.
Yep.
And so if there's, so I think the more we belabor this 4 verse 3, the longer we delay getting after the 4. The longer we get after getting into fundamental problems such as presented us earlier today in terms of the baseball and softball fields. So I think the sooner we resolve, or we have 4-site or 3-site, the better we can get after some very fundamental facility problems in this district that are really coming to a head.
Yeah.
Bill,
so I'm not, a recommendation is not a dirty word, by the way. It's a great word. If we are at the point where recommendations are being made, let's call them that, and let's discuss them with some rigor.
I would just like to add a clarifying thought. I mean, if you read it, there is a recommendation of the 4-site, but the plan is when we go to the town to start working with this, we're bringing the other options to the table to at least explain the process. And I have been very open throughout this entire journey that as long as we own the educational aspects of this and we are comfortable with it, if the town brings new information into the conversation that may change where we are, as long as we're good with the education aspects of it,
our job is done.
That's part of the process. So while I agree with what Tony said, the tremendous amount of work that the committee did in reviewing the educational feasibility, space constraints, et cetera, the numbers started adding up going to a 3-site option very quickly. We thought that there were going to be efficiencies, but then in working with the experts, it became clear that there were a multitude of reasons which are summarized in a lot of the documents that are going to be on the website. We had to separate more than we thought, and that's what drove the price tag up. So I'm good with saying that there is a leading recommendation, I guess is a way of saying it, but the other 2 items will be presented when we get into this town cooperative because
we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. The town's undergoing a 10-year plan. They could be bringing other ideas to the table that could, reassess how things flow. As long as we own the education, we're good.
I would urge you to think very long and hard about how large an elementary school you want here. And the social media has not been kind to me on that point, and frankly, I embrace that because I've got a lot of background on this. Nobody is building elementary schools of this size anymore. They're not doing it. They're not building elementary schools of this sprawl anymore. And so you would fundamentally put at risk the connections that are at the root of what makes this district so special. And arguably the connections is what failed us with the baseball and softball players. So, I just would urge the board, you are the governors of education in this town. And I would think long and hard about before you let this go, you got to be very comfortable if you bring a couple options forward that may put education at risk. Are you comfortable with those on the list, or how do you want to frame that? I would just urge you to in that decision process.
Yeah.
And again, Ruby, I hear your point very clearly. We never said tonight is the night to resolve this, as opposed to let's get it to you, get you thinking about it. It's always been the thought May, June, you're going to have to come back to it to begin grappling with it. But I would urge you, and I know I'm speaking, I have the entire professional corps behind me of your district, that as you go forward, if you hold on to this idea of a large elementary school, you need to think that through very carefully, because other districts just are not going there.
Well, I think the point is, I think we're kind of reading the tea leaves as far as the communication with the other boards. We're going to have to make the case of why we may disagree with that, if as a whole we disagree with it. So both things are going to have to be up there for discussion if you're asking for north of $50 million, north of $60 million. There's going to have to be complete transparency about why different things were chosen. So it has to come forward at least for a discussion.
I'm not saying don't bring it forward, but I think my recommendation, take it or leave it, is bring it forward. You may disagree, but if the recommendation from your administration, and if you went to all the teachers, would be, if you have this on the list, make it very clear it is a not desired option.
Yeah, and
I think the same when you keep saying the word large elementary school. I would also, in the same breath, say a very large middle/high school, because I would never live in a district where my child, as a 6th grader, is walking under the same roof as a 12th grader. I never would have supported that had I been involved in the earlier discussions to even go through further down the path with that option.
Well,
that's the first thing.
Let
me just finish
that's
what
what drove the price.
Let me
up.
just finish
We
what
wanted
I'm
to
saying
separate
here.
them.
So that's my first comment. The second comment is we have very few opportunities to discuss subjects like this in a forum like this, especially with the representative here. So I'm just kind of openly talking about my frustration at the fact that I'm losing an opportunity to have thoughtful discussion on this packet, only because this is just the first time I'm seeing this packet. So, and we've all talked about our frustrations about not having as many open forums to talk about matters such as this. So this is just yet another one of them.
If I may also, just to kind of clarify, I think Ruby, to your point, there's not support. The only reason there was an interest in looking at 3 sites was driven by dollars. Nobody said, let's go and take a middle school and a high school and combine them. But we simply said, when the question was, how could you conceivably have 3 sites in this town, we looked at those options. Again, only driven by dollars. We would agree with you. We would think the best way to go is to do the sort of efficiency move on this building, do the facility conditions for the rest of your building, stay with your 4. If you go back to the original report, very comprehensive from Super Petrocelli and Malone Groom, they use the word catastrophic. If you were to move off your 4 sites, it's on page 3 of that big volume. They say it would be catastrophic to play and mess around with your 4 sites. There's no enrollment reason to do it and all the rest, but we had to, in due diligence for the taxpayers, it was right to go through the process. So I just want to be clear, there's not an interest, frankly, in anything but the 4 sites here.
I hear you, Bill. I just think that if one thing that does echo all the time is everyone keeps hearing large elementary, and no one's talking about the other proposals of having a 6th grader walk under the same roof as a 12th grader. So I think they both deserve equal weight here in terms of the pros and cons to both options. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that to move to a recommendation requires all the board members to be fully educated on some of the work that's been done for months that they haven't been privy to. So it's probably a good idea to be able to have another open forum where people can digest this, ask questions, and so that ultimately, if we move to a and that was my goal is if I basically, my view is that I think we've done enough work that everyone could look at this and ultimately agree on a course of action and a particular recommendation. But that's something that everyone has to come to after they've kind of reviewed the material and get up to speed.
Yeah.
And that was that was kind of the next step.
Yeah.
So if we haven't given enough time for that, we should probably give enough time for that.
So Tony, also, let me just say that the fact that the three of us are new on the board
Yeah.
should not, and if we agree, will not slow down the process.
No.
We are getting up to speed as we need to. So that's not going to slow down the process. As a new member, though, it is kind of an advantage of ours, or mine, I'll speak for me, to observe the level of enthusiasm or hesitancy, caution, as we go into this process, because they are big numbers, big dollars. And I think, I just want to let you know that I have yet to hear enthusiasm about any of these ideas. That is, we have these scenarios, and everyone's looking at them. Again, I'm now flagging that I'm a new person and potentially able to observe this as a newcomer. But that before we go forward with anything to the town in particular, we ought to go forward with it enthusiastically and with real excitement and zeal and commitment to it, or else it won't fly. And I know we have to stay open to what the town can contribute and bring all options to the table, but it really feels like everyone's pretty darn nervous about this.
I think
For good reason. It's big
yeah,
dollars.
I was
But
gonna say, it's big dollars.
But again, if we invested in the process, and it's a 10-year feasibility study, and the future of our children and future children is at stake, we ought to get excited about some of it unapologetically.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ken, others, you have the principals here, I kept them late. I mean, I think where the enthusiasm would be to commit to 4. We run the numbers. Again, you need to get I don't want to rush it. I think we originally thought this might take several board conversations. You've got your committee, facilities, finance. You could have 6 or 7 dives into this, but I think this becomes your touchstone document now because it's so clear in terms of what's here, and then you can use it to kind of dig deeply on each of these items. But I mean, they're here for a reason. I think the enthusiasm would be, board, when you're ready, commit to 4. You can, it's still a lot of money, but you maintain the strengths of your elementary options, schools. You fix your middle school problems. You maintain the strengths of that 800-student high school that's, beacon. You fix the backside that is not of that building that's not been correct. That's where the enthusiasm. I think that the doubting and the worries are, will this town go down a path that to your professionals we don't think makes sense? I'm being pretty blunt. I want the process to work through it, go through it, and let's do that. But that's where I think it's very helpful insight. The fresh insight's very helpful because I think we're sort of a little nervous that somehow the move down this large elementary and yes, a combined secondary site that's not ideal, that somehow win the day.
I have heard some hesitation about that one as well. In other words, just not kind of resounding this as an exciting option. Right?
Well, it's the fixing up what we have, right? It's less exciting than potentially presenting a beautiful new architectural plan that's very different, right? It just is, right? And, right.
Ken?
But I will say the foresight approach, and I'm speaking for myself now, not the committee, it maintains, I think, what is one of the greatest strengths of Weston, and that is the highly personalized nature of the excellent educational product that we sell to the community and prospective home buyers. And at this middle school needs science, art, music, renovations so critically. When you look around this building, we are very passionate about that. The high school looks tremendous from the front, but we have got to address the back. And I think you'll hear that in an upcoming meeting. I do want to thank Michelle Miller, because when we had our last advisory meeting on Wednesday, I mean, we really just wrapped this up on Wednesday. She worked with me through the weekend so that we could bring this presentation here this evening. There were members of the committee who said, you know, should we just hold off another month? And we felt it was important to get this to you as soon as possible. So we literally just finished this today, got it to you a little ahead of the meeting, which, we try obviously to get it to you the Wednesday, but the meeting actually happened on Wednesday. But I think in future meetings now we've sort of created the the baseline of here's the information. Now we can work and address whatever your needs are for information. So, thank you, Michelle.
So it's totally okay if we want to have let this carry over, have a chance for people to really dig a little deeper and, come back to it again in May. That's totally okay.
You probably should.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was our hunch that would be, there's just too much here. You need a couple passes at it. And we didn't want to delay it to May, thinking that you would still need more time, so.
All right. Next item. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us.
You get the writing one?
Yeah. Yes. You're a busy man tonight, Dr. Crow.
Okay, so the next item, you have a new course proposal in front of you for a writing seminar at the high school. This course is a part of our...
Lisa go, do we got this?
What's that?
Do you need Lisa?
No, Lisa she doesn't have to stay. If she, yes. You have the paperwork there. Obviously, writing is critically important to us. It's a graduation requirement. We do have the Writing Center as a support to students, but we do find that each year when our students submit their writing portfolios, 10th grade, there are students who need additional support. So we flag who those students are. We work with them closely in the Writing Center. Teachers know who they are. But even still, students may need more focused attention than the Writing Center can provide. So having a course, a writing seminar course, where the teacher can work with students, help them in meeting that graduation requirement in a small group setting, is something that we're looking to put in place. We have students that we would identify and encourage to take that course, and work with those students to help them improve and meet with success. So that's the concept. It will also free up some time in the Writing Center for the general population to have access to more conference slots, because some of that time-intensive work will be done in the class.
I think having had students who went through the 8th grade portfolio and who are now working on their sophomore portfolio, it's nice to see the school being responsive to the needs of the students who need a little extra support in such a structured format, that we're really setting them on their way for success as they move out of our doors. And again, this is just another example of our building level administrators, Dr. Craw, our CILs, being responsive and creative in a way of providing a big asset for our students. Any questions, guys? Could I have a motion, please?
Sure. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the new course proposal for Weston High School English Writing Center Composition Seminar.
May I have a second? Thank you, Tony. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you. Rich, bus contract?
So we discussed this at the last Finance Committee. We have been exploring the possibility of a new bus contract, which would upgrade our existing fleet of buses, install new cameras, provide seatbelt-ready buses for the district. We did look at 3 potential firms who really are the only providers of Type 1 transportation in Fairfield County, Lower Fairfield County. First Student, who is who we currently have, SDA and DATCO. We are recommending going forward with First Student, who does provide excellent service. The contract would call for replacement of 50% of the fleet with brand new buses in year 1, with the remaining 50% of the buses replaced in year 2. The new buses would be equipped with digital recording equipment that will consist of at least 3 cameras. The new buses would be equipped with seatbelt-ready frames should the district decide to pursue seatbelts. It would come with First View parent and district dashboard bus tracking application, and First Student would also provide the routing. We are in need of new buses. The buses are actually from 2010. Just this year alone, we've had 282 instances of necessary work on our regular education fleet of buses. When this memo was written, we had 5 buses that broke down. We had another bus break down today at dismissal, so 6. The majority of our buses run in excess of 100,000 miles, with some as high as in excess of 200,000 miles. So we are in need of new buses. The cost in year 1 for transportation would be about an increase of $62,588. The offset to those costs, as we've discussed in our budget forms, would be within the special education revised contract proposal, which we will bring at a future date.
So
I absolutely love some of the pros that go along with this new contractor, including the 3 cameras, the seatbelt ready if we decide to go down that route, and then also just a mom addicted to her phone and all the apps that come with it, the bus tracking application. I just think that's phenomenal. I have 2 questions. The first question is, so we had today an instance where communication broke down in terms of letting the parents know that a bus was going to be late. With going to this new contractor, can you talk us through what would happen if something like that happened again?
Sure. So part of the issue we had today is we did have 4 drivers who are out. There are a shortage of drivers throughout Connecticut, and as the economy improves, the shortage of drivers increases. There are not a lot of people looking for jobs where you work an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at the end of the day, and have essentially a big donut hole. Having that First Parent View, an app, would allow you to track the bus's location and time of arrival. Unfortunately, the communication blast that was supposed to go out this morning did not go out. The individual at the bus garage had a little difficulty doing it, and unfortunately did not reach out to the backup individual. We also had an issue where we ended up having to pull those individuals at the bus garage to drive because we were 4 drivers short. Had we not done that, we would essentially had to cancel 2 bus routes, requiring parents to essentially drive their students in. So we are working with First Student to see if we can get an influx of more drivers. One of the things that First Student does, which STA, for example, and DATCO don't do quite as well, they're starting to offer sign-on bonuses for drivers to attract people to sign up. They've recently increased their wages to drivers in an effort to kind of enhance recruitment. But I think that First View dashboard app would go a long way with an instant like today.
Yeah, so that's key.
So would that particular function in the case where you're combining routes, as far as notifying the parents that they're being combined with a different bus, so they have transparency about?
Yeah, we'd still have to send out a communication blast indicating that bus 1 and bus 2, for example, were combined, but they would still be able to track the bus's arrival and departure, for example.
I also think it's important to note that our daily rate right now is the lowest in the DERG, which is fantastic. But then also when you look at our 4-year projection and paying for all of these great amenities that come with signing on with them, we jump up a little bit. And and we are then, you know, kind of right behind Ridgefield in terms of being the fourth most expensive in terms of transportation.
So
What happens after?
Sure. So
No. After year, if you look at 2024.
Sure. So these are their daily rates for the current year. The other districts will obviously increase
As well.
as their contracts go up. ER9, for example, just signed on with First Student to start next school year. So they're actually getting new buses as well, so you'll see them gradually go up as well.
Okay.
So typically, you wouldn't necessarily refresh every 5 years your fleet of buses. You might stagger them. The bus contract originally was a 2009 contract that got extended, I believe, in 2014 without new buses. I think ideally what you would rather have happen is if you're looking to have an extension after that first 5 years, you build in maybe a quarter of that fleet to be new. And then the next one you build in that next quarter, or maybe 50 and 50, so you can spread it
Okay.
out over time.
Okay.
That will help ease the burden of a higher daily rate going forward.
Yeah.
But because that did not happen in the past, and we essentially kept those old fleet of buses going back 10 years, you're now at a point where you have a critical mass of a need to replace buses.
Okay.
Any other questions? Could I have a motion, please?
The Weston Board of Education authorized the superintendent of schools or his designee to sign the recommended contract for Type 1 transportation services with First Student for a period of July 1, 2019 to June 30, 2024.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any further comments, questions? All in favor? Thank you. Rich, financial update?
So this is the financial report through March. Through March, we have an adjusted budget of $51.4 million, with year-to-date expenditures of $36.7 million, encumbrances of $14.1 million, special ed encumbrance holds of $75,000, anticipated expenditures of just over $1 million, leaving a projected balance before sewage costs related to the middle school sewage overage of $1,232. After sewage costs, a deficit of $469,601. We do anticipate going to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance in May for a request of a supplemental appropriation for that. There are transfers totaling $184,075 for approval, with 6 in excess of $5,000. Those include $55,000 for contracted services for Revson Field, $20,673 for repairs to the Xenon plant control system, $10,208 for materials for Revson Field, $9,000 for additional heating expenditures, $47,360 for district legal fees, and $17,500 for special ed legal fees. If we move forward to the Internal Services Fund, we have a relatively flat net change before IBNR of $2,030. After IBNR, we do have a fund balance of just over $1.5 million, which is a healthy fund balance.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the 9th fiscal year 19 financial update and approval of transfers presented by Mr. Richard Rudel.
May I have a second? Thank you, Ruby. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you. Lewis?
Sounds like it works. Okay. So we have 3 first readings on for this evening, policies and regulations. The first one is the board's administrative regulation 6146, which concerns graduation requirements. The changes that you see are for the class of 2023. So you'll actually see when the policy actually goes online, the part in the beginning you see crossed out will remain in the actual document. It'll just say commencing with class of 2023, and then everything else you see that's underlined will be added. The number of credits that are required is 25 by state law. This was put off for years and years by the legislature because the increased cost to some of the districts with we're having difficulties with the resources to offer those number of credits simply because it requires staff to offer those number of classes. That is not an issue here in Weston at all. Our
kids usually graduate with around 27. So that's really not an issue for us. There are a couple other things just to quickly point out, and I didn't bring it up in our committee meeting, and I apologize, but you'll note it was discussed at the committee meeting the last time we talked about it, which is now, used to be number 6 on page 2. It's now Roman numeral 5. You'll notice a small underline. It says grades awarded for such courses shall not be included in the student's GPA. That's never happened. Lisa pointed out at a prior meeting, and I just forgot to bring it up in our meeting, that so when a student transfers in, their transcript is attached, but their GPA is calculated based only on Weston grades. And you can see why that would be. So that's just a change that I didn't note in the committee, and I apologize, but it's just reflecting our longstanding practice. But we wanted to make sure that our policy also spelled that out, or our regulation. It's all pretty self-explanatory, the number of credits. One of the areas where we had to offer additional half credit was in health, which is why that area is bumped up a bit, and we had to deal with that in the budget as well. And also the mastery assessment, which has to occur, although if you have any questions, I would refer those to Dr. Craw, but that is something that must be 1 credit of this graduation requirement, but so that is listed in here.
Any questions? Again, these are just on for first read, but any
Yeah.
questions? Thank you.
No?
Student discipline?
Okay. Okay, the student discipline policy is sort of your all-encompassing policy dealing with, there are other specific policies that address specific disciplinary issues like alcohol or drugs or other things. However, this policy covers really everything, including those things. The main changes, they're all recommended by Shipman and Goodwin, and these are all statutory changes, mostly surrounding the expulsion process and the kind of alternative educational opportunity you must offer when a student is expelled. So changes like we now have to give at least 5 days of notice before a hearing. That was certainly our practice before and would continue to be. A new rule that went into effect is parents have a right to request an extension of up to 1 week in order to retain counsel. That's never been an issue before for us. Specifying that we have the burden of proof in an expulsion hearing. Again, that's been the law for a long time, but it's now built into your policy. Also, there was language that we were not required to offer an alternative educational opportunity to students between ages 16 and 18 if they were found to have a weapon or offered a controlled substance for sale or distribution. That's been removed. We've always offered an alternative educational opportunity anyway, but those would have been circumstances. However, that has now been changed. So if a student has been expelled a second or subsequent, a third, fourth, and so forth, that would now trigger you not having that requirement if they're between the ages of 16 and 18. And the alternative educational opportunity is actually going to be the subject of the next regulation I'm going to discuss, so I won't bore you with too much of that. But that is the primary changes. And then also, it clarifies also the rights of 504 and special education students regarding whether if the expulsion or the suspension would constitute a change in placement. There's other procedures we have to follow. Again, always part of our practice, but it's just specified. So there's no new offenses that have been changed. It's more process. Okay. Your next first reading is a new regulation, which is attached to now would be, once you approve it at the next meeting, your discipline policy, and that is the Alternative Educational Opportunities for Expelled Students regulation. And this is all brand new language, which is why there's no fancy track changes on it. And basically, it's following what the state requires now, which is that students have an individual learning plan when they are offered this opportunity, focused on that student's needs, and ultimately also, obviously, if there's an IEP or a 504 plan in place, commensurate with that. It used to be that you could just offer an expelled student a certain number of tutoring hours a week, and that was usually good enough. Now there's more of a focus that the student who's been expelled continue their education, except under that extraordinary circumstance of a 16 to 18-year-old who's been expelled more than once, in which case, of course, we still have the opportunity to offer that opportunity to offer that educational program. Some districts, larger districts, they will actually have a school that they run for expelled students to offer these kind of things. We don't have that, although we have been talking with CES about some possibilities to do something. CES is your regional educational cooperative, to try to offer something like that. But right now we offer it in-house. We don't have a large number of expelled students, fortunately, so we've been able to meet those needs in-house. That's really it for that one.
Thank you. Any questions, guys? Non-renewals?
Okay, so I suggested a motion. We're not going to have any non-renewals this evening. We do, however, have a resignation, not a retirement, so I would want to change the next one, but there are no non-renewals to vote on tonight.
Yeah, I have a motion. Move that the Board of Education add to the agenda item resignation in place of the current agenda item entitled retirements.
May I have a second, please? All in favor? Thank you.
So the resignation comes to us from Kathleen O'Brien, who's a special education teacher, at Hurlbut Elementary School. It'll be effective the end of the year, just a standard resignation. We don't have any retirements on this evening, although I will expect a few at the next meeting. Couple. That's it. So you're just acknowledging, you would just acknowledge that the resignation of the superintendent, just for the new members, accepts all resignations on behalf of the board by resolution from several years ago.
Yeah, move that the Weston Board of Education acknowledges the retirement of Kathleen O'Brien.
Resignation.
Just resignation,
So
sorry.
resignation.
Sorry. My fault.
Of Kathleen O'Brien.
Thank you.
May I have a second, please? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. All right. At this time, could I please have a motion to enter into executive session? We will invite Dr. McCursey, Mr. Rudel, and Mr. Bray. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Members of the public, please excuse us while we step into our room. Meredith, you look confused. Oh, Ruby did. Oh.
What?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Who seconded?
Ruby seconded.
Someone joining, is Dan joining us?
What?
Is Dan joining us by phone?
I'm going to try to call Ellen. So
Oh, it's Ellen, not Dan.
Yes.
See ya.
Can only hope.
All right, thanks. Louis, you ready?
Okay, at this time, if we could please resume our public session. Louis, when you're ready.
All right.
Okay. So where are we? Okay, so you have 3 memoranda of understanding before you, one with each of the collective bargaining groups for an insurance buyout for the 2019-20 year, which would be a $5,000 payment to employees of the district if they elected not to take the state partnership plan insurance, which is our health insurance plan. It would also be offered, which is the 4th item you're going to vote on, to qualifying non-affiliated employees, and that's people who qualify for the insurance but aren't in a union. The goal is to have 80 members of your staff take this. If that were to happen, the savings have been built into your budget, so if this doesn't happen, that would be something we'd have to talk about if we don't get the 80, or if for some reason the MOUs didn't pass. They have been agreed to by all the unions. Once the board ratifies, we will send out a notice to all the employees. They need to elect this by the end of May. I think it's May 29th is the deadline. And if they do, we would move forward. The payments are put off until May of 2020, and there's various provisions in there protecting people's right to return to the policy if they have a qualifying event, but that would affect the payment of the incentive payment. They're all essentially identical, the 3 MOUs, except they reference different parts of the 3 relevant contracts. None of the payouts are pension eligible. We will not be paying MERS on any of these. Teachers will not be paying into their retirement on any of these. However, other withholdings are applicable, taxes and so forth. So I have them on as 3 separate items. I ask that you vote on them as 3 separate items. And then the last one, which is the special authorization to qualifying non-affiliated, vote on that. And then we'll take it from there.
All right, if I could have a motion, please, for the teachers union.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the memorandum of understanding between the Weston Board of Education and the Weston Teachers Association regarding the insurance buyout offer.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any further questions, discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Administrators Union?
Motion?
Mhm.
Okay. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the memorandum of understanding between the Weston Board of Education and the Weston Administrators Association regarding an insurance buyout offer.
May I have a second, please? Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Thank you. AFSCME? If I could have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the memorandum of understanding between the Weston Board of Education and Local 1303-110 of Council at AFS-CME, AFL-CIO regarding insurance buyout offer.
May I have a second? Thank you, Ruby. All in favor? Thank you. Then qualifying non-affiliates, please.
Move that the Weston Board of Education authorize the superintendent of schools to offer an insurance buyout to all qualifying non-affiliated employees employed by Weston Public Schools.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Taffy. All in favor? Great. Thank you. All right. We are done with new business. Now to old business. Ted, just so you know, the only thing we have left now is some calendar adjustments and a few policy adjustments, just so you know.
So I'm going to do the calendar
Yes, please, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, so the calendar, you've got, the first is to vote on the 1920 calendar, any adjustments to that. You had a couple recommendations on page 2 of the March 20th memorandum, recommendation 1, recommendation 2. However, we did send to you, based on a new development, another recommendation from 1920 is that we shift the spring full-day professional development day from the March 16th date, which had been on the original calendar, shifted to April 28th. And that aligns it with the presidential primary for 2020. We've been assured by the Register of Voters that that is indeed the date. The administration and SILS feel we can make that change work, and it's a positive in that we would only have staff in the district on that presidential primary. It becomes a logistical and safety challenge if we are trying to have the voters here and a full day of school. And indeed, they would probably relocate the voting to the town hall, which is inconvenient for the town. So this is a pretty easy shift. So again, for 1920, the only modifications recommended are the shifting and the full day professional development day for the spring, and then you see those two recommendations, fairly minor ones for adjustments on page 2 of the March 20th memorandum under 1920.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the changes to the approved 2019-2020 school calendar as presented by Dr. McCursey.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone have any questions, comments before we vote? All right. All in favor? Thank you. On to the 2021 school year calendar.
So this is your first full vote on this calendar. Obviously, the 1920 had been previously approved, and as happens a year out, you are able to modify it as you just have. For 2021, this is your first full look. You had seen it last month. It came through the committee process. We believe it's a good recommendation. The particulars are laid out here. The only sort of wrinkle, if you will, which I think is a good way to handle this, is the handling of Rosh Hashanah with an early dismissal on Friday, September 18th. That was discussed last month. I think the rest of it's quite straightforward, and so thus the recommendation to support it is listed.
We don't have an attachment. It's not in this month. It was in last month. But Meredith. So it's in the. It's in A.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I just because I just went back and looked at last month's.
Got it. Sorry. Oh, I see it. Okay.
So if we could have a motion for that, please.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the proposed 2020-2021 calendar as presented by Dr. McCursey.
May I have a second? Thank you, Ruby. Anyone have any questions or comments before we finally vote? All right. All in favor? Great. Thank you. Louis?
All set?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you have 3 items on for second readings this evening. There have been no changes since the last meeting where we discussed this in more depth, and obviously the policy committee reviewed all of these as well. So the first one is the second reading for the student privacy policy, which is a whole new policy recommended by your firm Shipman and Goodwin. There are a number of other policies, by the way, that affect student privacy, including the educational records policy being one of the primary ones, and search and seizure and so forth. This deals with some other issues. The other policy, I'm just going to read them all off. The restraint and seclusion and use of exclusionary timeout is an update, all recommended by your outside counsel again. We discussed this at the last meeting. And the final policy that's on for a second reading and approval is your news media relations, which simply reflects the longstanding practice of the district. This policy hadn't been updated for several decades, but that it goes through the superintendent. The superintendent usually then will refer the inquiry to the appropriate person. Sometimes he handles it himself or herself. in case of Bill's predecessor, but it's really just modified to reflect what our actual practice is. And that's it. There have been no changes since your last discussion.
All right, so we will go through and do the motions individually, so we make sure to have the correct policy numbers for reference on the minutes. So if we could start with the student privacy, please.
Move that,
No, by all means.
move that the Board of Education to approve Board of Education Policy 5125.1, student privacy.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions, guys? I know this is a second read, so it's been through policy and a meeting before this. All in favor? Thank you. Restraint and seclusion?
Does he need to speak, or can we move? Okay, move that the Weston Board of Education approve Board of Education Policy and Administrative Regulation 5142, restraint and seclusion and use of exclusionary timeout.
Second, please. Thank you, Ruby. Again, any comments, questions? All in favor? Thank you. News Media Relations.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve Board of Education Policy 1112, news media relations.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Thank you. Superintendent's report.
I think in deference to the hour, we're well reported out, so I have nothing to add.
Do any committee information you want to get out, guys? Next scheduled, well, I guess, are we set with the schedule for the board, for the budget meeting?
We're not.
Okay.
We didn't get to that today
Okay.
in the chair meeting, but
Okay.
the 9th is off the list. The 14th, we don't even have a quorum, so we may have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
So we have
Next,
to figure
okay.
that out.
So budget meeting to be scheduled. Next regular session on May 20th. And then we're going to fly by pending items, or are we going to?
Well, I think we should, I think we should add to the agenda another discussion about the Phase 2 feasibility study.
Yeah.
I think that'd be, just put that as an open discussion item.
Okay.
I think I'd recommend that it come up in facilities. That's already Thursday. Might be too soon, but we can talk with Ellen about that. Maybe
Okay.
Gina, if I'd recommend you would
I'll reach out
talk
to
with her. That would be the only addition. We also will add, if it's not in there, the full school start end time report, simply that on the survey.
Mhm.
That's just the full rendering of that survey report.
Mhm.
So we can look and see. I'm glad we took it out of this meeting, because
Right.
we'd still have another couple hours left if we hadn't.
Yeah, no, I know.
So the one major item to add, to repeat myself, would be the coming back to the Phase 2
Okay.
discussion.
All right. I appreciate everybody staying late. I felt that the families needed time to express themselves. So I know that extended our time this evening, and I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Gina, if I can also thank you, I actually had the conflict that led to us not having the executive session at the beginning with my son's senior night. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I know
Okay,
it
family
cuts
comes
everyone
first. All right, with that, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Woohoo.